right, I'm gonna start up, okay? And there are a couple people in here that either have not been in a class with me before, or it's been a while since they've been in a class. So some of the stuff that's in here is going to be review for some of you. We only have to do this the first day, so that shouldn't be any kind of an issue. Now this is Anders, and Anders, just so you know, if technically if you're not in the class yet, that means that you're not in Blackboard yet, so they don't have an account for you yet, etc. If there's not a problem with that, I'll be able to check tomorrow morning. And everything that I provide for them, I can throw it out on your H drive then. Okay, so it won't be any kind of issue. We will have it rectified by Thursday. I'm not worried about it at all. So going over the syllabus, again, if you hadn't heard this previously, I made the conscious, or at least semi-conscious, decision that this year I'm not printing out any syllabi. And I told the first year people yesterday, if somebody really wants one and they want a hard copy, and you say, well, I don't think I should have to print out, then just send me an email and I'll print you out one. That's not a problem. None of the first year people cared. I asked yesterday. Nobody seemed to care, and that's fine. I'd rather just keep them electronic, be as green as we can possibly be. Also, again, I know some of you have heard this already at least once, but this room, there is no one in here on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 to 10 other than me and maybe whatever lab assistant happens to meander in. All right? So there are no classes in here then, so you're welcome to come in. My Monday and Wednesday classes, my classes, I won't speak for Jim Schmidt, you have to talk to him, but in the morning on Monday and Wednesday, there's 21 in the C# class, there's 16 in the Java class. Out of the 21 we have in the C# class, 17 came on Monday, which is actually pretty good. And 2 people caught me in the hall and said they both thought it was a Tuesday-Thursday class, all right? So they said they'll be coming. And the other 2, one of them got a hold of me and said he had problems with his financial aid and literally spent 4 hours up in the financial aid office yesterday. I don't wish that on anybody. But he said he will be here. So what I'm saying is, for that class, with John having a seat, there won't be much available seating. But if you do want to come in here even on a Monday or Wednesday from 8 till 12, there's an open seat. I have no problem with that. And, Laura will tell you, because she came in a couple times last semester, I don't mind stopping and what I'm doing and going over there and opening up the cabinet. I really have no problem doing that. All right? Okay. But those are my office hours. And since they took away my afternoon classes, when my morning classes are done, I'm gone. And then I'm still waiting for them to find that out and to tell me, no, you got to be here, because that's going to be a really interesting confrontation. Not if, but when that happens. Okay? Yeah, I'll be here as long as you can catch me. Yeah, you're a fat guy. We can catch you. Yeah, not that fat. All right. Much easier to get a hold of me through email. You know that. This is the iPhone class. The one that's right before this, of course, was the Android class. All right. If it's a lab day, I could care less what you work on. All right. I mean, you're all big boys and girls. I really and truly could. And if you and the plan is too, once we get in, those of you who are in the dip class in the morning on Thursdays, like I said, once we go through the first 7 weeks, it's going to be lab. I'll open that cabinet up all the time. I don't care. I really and truly don't care. But I will tell you, there's no backup. If somehow those machines go bye-bye or stop, we don't have a backup. There is none. Not only that, if there's a hardware problem with the machines, IT has already told me, it's on you, Jeff. Because none of their people are Mac certified. They don't want to touch these machines. That was the way it was put to me. So I'm hoping, we went through last semester and we didn't have any problems, and I'm hoping that continues. Yes. No, I really and truly don't think that, honestly. Terry Prindle, our virtual desktop engineer, he's not only one of the more talented people I've ever met here, he's one of the nicer people I've ever met here. And I really and truly, if he said to me that he looked at it and they were incompatible, I believe him. I really do it. Now, could he be throwing one over on me? He could. But there's no reason for him to do that. If he didn't want to do it, I think he'd tell me, Jeff, I don't want to do that. And we'd leave it at that. He told me he tried to do it, though. So, all right. This is taken right from Banner, so you can read that as you want. Now, I say in here this, and we're going to talk about that. Some of you have already heard this shtick. We'll talk about that in a little bit. All right. The idea is, boy, if we can do that, that's kind of cool, because there are not a lot of people that are out there right now. As far as I know, the Apple has not developed anything for any kind of Swift certification. The language itself is still, technically it was released on June, whenever their worldwide development conference was. So when you look at that, that's the 6th month. Literally, the thing is about 7 or 8 months old. So you are doing cutting edge. In fact, when a lot of these tapes and the stuff that I watch, when that stuff was created, they could, because of legal disclosure agreements, they couldn't even show screenshots. So they had people who were using beta copies and they were making tapes. They could show you the code, but they couldn't show you the running code. Because in order to do that, they would have had to show you some of the components of Xcode 6.1, which wasn't released yet either. So it's all whatever. That's why I said here for textbooks to be determined. We'll talk about that in just a minute. All right. No, there won't be 8 assignments. Depending on the route that we decide to go, what I'm looking at, probably what we're going to end up doing is you will have a project. So let's say, for example, with you, that there's something that you're interested in doing. I could care less what it is, as long as, please don't make it be porn. And I don't think it would be anyway. But, yeah, we already have too many of those in here. But as long as it's within the realm of good taste, and you want to do if you say, hey, Mike was talking about he got a chess set. So if you want to develop your own chess game, that'd be fine. I don't really care. What I'm saying is it's totally open. Whether it's an app that you would use, if it's one you plan on selling, whatever, it really and truly doesn't matter. All right, but what you'll be graded on is the stuff that we end up going over in the class. It literally would be how much of that you incorporate and how you incorporate it. It's not, boy, Mike, you made yours in purple and I hate purple. Why? That would make no sense to grade you like that. All right. So you can see that the competencies are very simplistic. Demonstrate the use of using Xcode. Demonstrate interface builder. Talk about playgrounds. And then finally to create applications using Swift. All right. And with some of that stuff, again, depending on who you are in here, you may or may not have ever even heard of some of this stuff. All right. I dropped the ball a little bit. This is the first time. And I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you, this is the first time literally during a break that I took a break this year, in all the years I've been here. But I just want to tell you that there's a few things I'm still checking on. And one of those things, and I'll take your question, one of those things is last semester, once we upgraded these machines that you have right here from OS X Mountain Lion to OS X Yosemite, and once we did that, Camtasia didn't work on these machines anymore. That's why I'm taping here. I wanted to be able to tape from that machine. So last year, what the people in here will tell you is for the last 4 weeks, what they saw was my machine running on there, but what people watching the tape saw was on here. I don't want to do that. And I found a site that had a workaround for this problem with Camtasia, but I didn't get a chance because I found it right before lunch. So I want to try it at home and try to make some tapes. But if I can do that, what that'll mean is starting Thursday, I'll be taping totally from there. And I won't be showing you anything from here. Does that make sense to everybody? That's what I want to do. One of the people who's in this class is that Dave von Falkenstein that I mentioned. He won't be here for any of the classes. Dave works full-time for Janesville News, either the Beloit paper or the Janesville paper. But he told me, he said, Jeff, I've got a backup plan of my own. Maybe, hopefully, Dave, hopefully you don't mind I'm saying this. He said, we've got a few Macs at work. They're a little bit older. They're 3 or 4 years old, which should still work, depending on the type of Macs they are. So I told him how he can try to go and add Yosemite. And he said they're not used much. That's even better, because I don't want him to screw up any of their work machines. But if you've got a Mac machine at home, supposedly this stuff will even work on an iPad mini. I don't know. I've read stuff where it doesn't work on an iPad, but it works on an iPad mini, which to me makes no sense. All right? But if you want to try it on there, that's fine. I know you can go out, and I've seen them as cheap for like the MacBook Air used ones, as cheap as a few $100. The problem was, what the problem is with a used computer. That sometimes it's worth what you pay for it, and you go and you buy one, you spend a few $100, and then it becomes a lemon. So whatever. All right, now let's talk about the book. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, then it's a screw up on my part. It's 153. Thank you. And let's change that right now. change that here. That's all I can attribute that to is the wonders of copy and paste. All right, and me not reading. But if I don't do it now, I won't do it. Yeah. See that? That's 152, but someplace on here evidently it says 156. There. That should be a 3. Thank you. So I'll save it there. And I'll do a save as. And save it as a PDF. And then later, I will take everything and throw that on the blackboard. And there's also, this is, maybe you know this already, but I don't know what your background is here at this institution. So just so you do know that, again, like I said, I tape everything, and if you go out to the school's website, which, blackhawk.edu, what'll happen once you get your account, okay, is under online services, this is called the portal, the MyBTC login, and once you log in there, so once you log in, it'll look I haven't done any customization of mine, so yours will look something like this. And when you go to Blackboard, I tape all the lectures. So they'll all be out there. So what you'll see out here, if that's the only class you're taking, is over here you'll have a link like this one that says micro or mobile web app dev iPhone. And you go there and you click on it. All you need is an internet connection, nothing else. And the syllabus is there. The videos will all be out there. There aren't any videos yet. But the videos, I use Camtasia, and I tape them. I produce them right here. Then I upload them to YouTube. And it's my voice and the computer. And that's what you'll see. Even on here, it'll be the same way. All right. But what you'll see today, of course, will just be this stuff. All right. And the like the book source, I notice I've already put some stuff out there. These are even other books that I found free online. This is that one, the beginning iPhone development with Swift, the one I just showed you, and we'll look at it in a minute. That's all the source. This is another book they had out there. Migrating to Swift from Android. That's all the source. Here's Swift by Tutorials, all right, which I probably, to be honest with you, shouldn't have copied in here, but it's there and I'm going to keep it there. Just realize that if you do download it, it's 130 megs, so it's not going to work like that. Maybe if you do it at home and you've got a good connection, it'll be pretty fast. All right, and this I don't even need anymore. There's more to be provided. All right, so that's out there for the source. For the PDFs, same kind of thing. That's the beginning iPhone development with Swift, the one I put on all of your H drives, and again, we'll have that for you on Thursday. The Swift quick syntax reference, that PDF is out there. The migrating from Swift to Android, that's out there. I'd rather give you way too much stuff and have you be able to look through it on your own and say, you know what, it's not the book we're using, but it's pretty good, and look through that, than give you one thing and put all our eggs in one basket, as the saying goes. All right, there are no PowerPoints that I saw in any of these books, so that's why it says if possible, but we'll see. Anything that we do in class that I save, I put out here. So it'll also be on the P drive, and it'll be here. Any homework that you have, I'll just write something. Again, it'll be to do a project, but we'll, just like with the Android class and with the DIP class, we'll do the project in stages. So somewhere around week 3 or week 4, I'm going to ask you to write, give me a one-page Word or something document. I don't care if it's Notepad, all right? But something like that that just has about a page on what you're planning on doing. And if you've got time to mock up what you think it'll look like, fine. If you don't, that's also fine. A lot of times what happens when I give a class like this is I'll tell people to mock something up, and they do. Then they start building it, and it's nothing like their mock-up was, and they think I'm going to take off. No. Just so I have some kind of an idea what it is you're going to work on. All right? That's all that this is going to be. This semester, I told you, those of you who were in the class last semester, I told you this, that as far as this goes, this semester is easier than last semester was. It is. Because you're given a lot more freedom and a lot more latitude, and you get a lot of project-based classes that in some ways can intermingle kind of with one another. That's what I want. I want the last semester, I want you to be honing your resume and your cover letter and whatever and be looking for a job. I mean, to me, if X number of you, whether it be 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, graduate, and all of you have jobs when you graduate, ideally in the field. But if you all have jobs, I've done my job then. And if I can give you some more time to do that, then that works well. All right? And no one's complained about it so far, so I guess if you have a problem, that you will end up complaining. All right. Any questions on any of that? All right. Then, okay, we talked about this a little bit before, and I'm just going to show it again. Originally in here, in fact, if you go out to Banner, what you're going to find is the book that we were going to have for this class is this one right here. Now, some of you have heard this, but I'm making sure you hear the entire thing. When my book rep was in here last October, I went out to Amazon, and this is one, I'm sorry, I went out to Prentice Hall. I went out to their website. This was one of the books that they showed as being available in mid-December. This one right there. And I asked him, and he said, Jeff, it might slip, but I guarantee you that it'll be available by the end of the year. And I even said, Max, I'm going to order it, but it has to be available then, because if students want it by the end of the year, they'll be able to look at it for a couple weeks, order it on Amazon, look at it at home, and then have looked at it once class starts. He said it will be available. Well, again, you've all heard this. This is slipped from December to January, now to February, and it may or may not be available then. Okay? Now, what Blackhawk does is when you go out to Blackhawk and you go to courses.edu, which has got the whole thing in there, supposedly, once you come out here and you click that view book info, I was told this by one of the vice presidents of the college, so somebody I trust, that this can't be changed. Okay, that's what I was told. Once it's out there on Banner, it can't be changed. That said, once I got a thing from the bookstore saying it wouldn't be available till at least the beginning of February, the next thing I got sent from my boss was, do you want to change the book? That's never happened before since they've gone to this. So what I'm telling you is we can still change the book. We're not tethered to this one. All right? I can literally, if you all say, oh yeah, well then we should go with this one, which is available right now. And Andrews, just so you know, that's this book right here, and it's virtually the same book they're using for the Android class. All right? I don't think this is as good a book as the Android book is, because it doesn't have a lot of complete apps in it, but it's a good book. I'm not saying it's this is basically the same as the Android book. Let's just leave it at that. Okay? There's things you might find that are different in this one that you don't like as much. How's that? But it's a fine book, and it's not, neither one of them, the cost, it's exactly the same. So notice $39.99, which is the regular cost. All right, if we wait for the bookstore here, if I tell them to order it today, they'll still order it. All right, from what I hear. I can still order 5, 6, 10, 12 copies. I can do that. It will not be at our bookstore. It will not be, at best, it'll be this price. It will not be that price. Even if they got it for that price, they're still going to put their markup on it. I mean, they have to make money. I understand that. Hopefully you do. So, again, what we can do is we can go with this book. And if just so you see this, I think I can click on it. So this will look real familiar to those of you who are in the Android class. Again, if you didn't get a chance to see it earlier. This is an intro to developing with Swift. There's the welcome app. They don't put, of course, the Android figure in it. They don't put the Swift thing in there, which is kind of a bird. They don't put that in there either. There's the tip calculator. There's the Twitter searches, the flag quiz, the Canon. All right, the Doodles app, the address book, and then finally a little bit about the Google Play Store. So it is, again, it is essentially the same book. What's that? You're right. You're right. I'm thinking the last class. You're right. It's the Apple Store. So we could go with that one. Okay? We can go with this one once it comes in. This book is not a book that has a lot of Swift apps in it. This is a programming book that is designed to show you what Untitled considers to be the major features of Swift and he gives you a lot of snippets, but there's not a lot of complete applications in this book. The reason I went with this one, you said, well, then why didn't you go with the other one? Because this is the one that he told me would be ready by the end of the year. He didn't even mention the other book. Yeah, but again, and you know this, that with some people, well, what I'm saying though is with some people, especially if you're on financial aid or whatever, you know, this can become an issue. And there are probably people in here, or there very well could be people in here that are not on financial aid, but they're putting themselves through. And you know, if they're doing this and working part-time to try to supplement and make sure they can live, you know, $40 here and $40 there is a lot more than $40 here and $40 there, to, you know, to some people as opposed to other people. That's all. And again, the other thing, and this is the one that you've all seen now, is you've all got this one. And you can get, I can put this one out there, but just so you know, there's a terrific site, if you've never seen this site before, that if you go out to, what is it, itebooks.info. it-ebooks.info. I don't know if I can't imagine that this stuff is illegal that they're putting out here, because if it was, somebody would have shut them down. But if I come out here and I type in Swift programming, that's where I got this book. And the other ones, the Swift Quick Reference. This is a little older, iOS ebooks. I don't know if there's any, it says, yeah, it's the most definitive. I don't think, oh, maybe it is. And I don't even think that one was there last time I looked. All right, but they're always adding stuff in here. And again, so you can do it at home, or I can put it on your H drive once you get an H drive. But all you have to do is click here, and it comes up and it says, what do you want, you know, depending on what format you want. All right, but I always just download the ebook. Boom, that's it. All right. So that is this book right here. So when we went to vacation, I wasn't sure what we were going to be doing. So I literally came in here during the break, and I can't do this for you. You know, I printed out, in fact, I got to get two of them when I go upstairs. I printed out for everybody the actual Swift manual from Apple. It's about 400 pages. You all know what it is. You have one, John, right? All right, I think everybody has one here, Anders, except you, and Travis doesn't have one, and Mike, you don't have one. You'll each have one after the break. I've got about 4 or 5 of them still sitting on my desk upstairs. All right? And they're supposed to be the, quote, definitive guide, unquote, to Swift. That said, I think everybody in here will agree, there are no complete apps in there. There's just code snippets up the wazoo. But it's a nice getting started type of thing. It really is. So we went over part of it, and I have to see how to do this, but I don't know why I shouldn't be able to. But you know, this here, what I left out here, and I've got to get them to give you access again. I don't know if you still do, but the advanced Java stuff from last semester and the secure coding stuff from last semester, I still have that out there. Now I don't know if that's on your Blackboard sheets, but if it's not, what I'll do is I'll get the class rosters for both and give you all access to that. All right, so it's got, what I'm saying is we did some Swift stuff last semester, so those lectures are already out there. So if I go to secure coding and I go down to the videos, the first part of the class that was in here, that was C, so we went over all that stuff. So that's all this. Then we went into Objective-C. All right, we talked a little bit about that. All right, then we went into, at the end, we went into a project, 2 projects in Objective-C. And then finally, notice there were quite a few lectures. Then we went into some Swift stuff. All right. And that reminds me, too, when you saw this last semester, again, I apologize. I realize with some of this stuff, it's a little bit of repetition. But if you go out to raywanderlich.com, this is one, maybe I spelled it wrong. It's Wenderlich, that's why. All right. So if you go out to raywanderlich.com, this guy, he's got people working for him, he's putting out books, but he's got tons of free videos, articles, tutorials. If you sign up, you can sign up for free to be, for his newsletter, and it's pretty good. That's him. He's not bad to listen to. All right, I mean, I know sometimes you listen to things and you get somebody with a really harsh accent and it's hard to listen to it. He's not like that at all. He doesn't push anything at you, but again, when you look on here, he literally, if I go to the written part, I'm not going to go through these, but he literally has hundreds of things in there, and many of the things that are in here there we go. There's the Swift stuff, for example. You can see as I'm going up here. So that's all Swift. We went through a couple of these last semester. All right, just so you're aware of that. All right, that's on those lectures that I showed you. That's what it was. Yeah, we went through the quick start, the simple iOS, and we went through the tuple things here. Yeah, we went through those. So that, if you go out to these, that's what you're going to find in there. Now, one thing too, and I'm saying this for the benefit of you, but the class will tell you I make more than my share of mistakes. And I don't have time to go in there and edit when I get done. So there'll be times when I'll do something and somebody will yell out, no, you did it wrong. And I'll change it, but it's in there and it's still wrong. All right, just so you know. All right. I don't do that on purpose. I do it fine without even trying to do it on purpose. All right. So what I would like to do, just so you can, and I'm not trying to influence you, even if it seems like I am, is what I'd like to start doing today is I'd like to go over the appendix, which is a Swift introduction to Swift, all right, and then go over at least chapters 1 and 2. 1 is really short, all right, and possibly even get into 3. What they've done, and I'm not going to lie to you, in this book there's 22 chapters. I've read the first 10. By and large, what the author does with this book that you see on your screen right now is he gives you a kind of a completed app at the beginning of the chapter, and then you build it throughout the chapter. Now that said, many of the apps in the first 5 or 6 chapters, they're really, really simple. Because what he's showing you are things like, okay, when you do auto layout, here's how you can do this, here's how you can do that. So he takes and gives you very simple commands, and very, the logic and stuff that's in there is very simple. But that said, the techniques and stuff that he teaches you are not. All right? So unless anybody has a big problem with it, and again, I can pass this around again during the break. I do want it back. But I'm willing to go whatever route you want to go. But I figured, at least with this, because I'm kind of prepared with this, we can go through this and you can see what it's like and kind of gauge whether or not you'd want to do it that way. All right, so like I said, good, bad, or indifferent, there's actually 4 different ways we could do this class. We could do this book. We could do that other Swift book by Dytel. We could do this book, or I could keep bringing in tutorials. And again, I'm just going to tell you my own thing is the problem with keep bringing in tutorials is unless they're by the same author, authors write differently. And I think that if we had different tutorials by different people, you'd get good information. I'm not saying that I would do a great job, but the information that's in there would be good. The problem is a lot of times the writing styles and the way they tell you to code is very different. The advantage you're going to get with this book that you see on the screen or either of the Dytel books is standardization, uniformity. They're going to all be done in the same way. That's why I'd prefer one of those 3 ways. Out of the 3 ways that are left, we can do them any way you want. And I try to be as democratic, diplomatic as I can. So even Dave, who's not here, so there's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know how we got 10. Yeah, that's right, there's 10. There's 12 in the class. Kelly's not here, all right, and Dave is not here. I will email both of them, and tell them to, I'm not going to explain this because it took 5 minutes to explain it to you now, but I'm going to say, please watch the first tape and tell me what you think. With Kelly, if you didn't hear, his father-in-law is taken ill. He's almost 91, and Kelly's one of the few people it sounds like he relates to. So he wants to be there for him. All right, I understand that. I don't have a problem with that. He told me when he came in today, then he got the phone call. So he did come in. He tried to come in. And like I said, Dave won't be here, but we'll work around this. We'll do whatever we can do, however we have to do it. So this first appendix here is a swift introduction to Swift. All right, and again, no, I'm not going to read everything to you. That would be stupid. All right, a new feature in Xcode 6.1 is this idea of playgrounds. And believe me, if you think, oh yeah, you showed us playgrounds, I didn't show you nothing. You can literally write complete apps in a playground. You can do that. You can write a complete app in a playground. Not only that, in a playground, you can add GUI things into a playground. You can do that. I didn't show you because I'm not very good at it. I'm still learning it myself. All right? So what we're going to do with the playground that we'll do on Thursday, it'll look very similar to some of the stuff you've done before. I'll give you a couple minutes to play with the playground, no pun intended, but then we're just going to build something as a class. All right, we're going to build something as a class. Then when we get done building it as a class, we're going to sit there and just leave that playground up. Then we're going to go in and create a Swift project, and you'll see how you're able to copy most of that code that you put in right into your Swift project. Boom. It's not difficult. It really isn't. But the thing about a playground to realize is playgrounds, all right, when you set it up, it's a single file. Did everybody hear that? When you start to write apps, the chance of you writing an app of any complexity and having only one Swift file are none. Not that they're small, they're none. Because every time you have a different view, you have a different view controller file. So you can't work with playgrounds unless, to my knowledge, I don't think you can have different playground files talk to one another. I don't think they've got that incorporated yet. They might, and I might be wrong. All right, but they talk in here first about using playgrounds, and literally when you bring it up, that's all you see. You can see that it's color coded, so the comments in green, the keywords are in blue, etc. All right, strings are in red, and your variable names, etc., are in black. And what's different about the playground from the way this used to be is literally, notice you put in here var str equals hello playground. Okay? As soon as you put something in, you get immediate feedback on the side. And there's more to the playground than what I showed you last year. Because, for example, if instead of doing what they have right here, if we'd have written a for loop to say, just let's say we put a for loop in there to write I love Swift 10 times. Okay? It doesn't show automatically in here. Just so you know, it doesn't show that. There's other things that are in here that are hidden until you open them up. You usually open them up by just clicking on them. Okay? Well, one of the things that they have put in here in Swift into the playground is they put in a histogram. And just to real quickly show you what I mean, I'm just going to put some code in here. And don't worry, the code that I'm going to put in here now isn't worth copying, so please don't. But imagine I wrote something like this. Yeah, that will be fine. No, it is var int. I don't even have to do that. Var count equals 0. That's fine. All right. Yeah, we don't need these anymore. Remember that. We don't need those. But we do need these. Okay, we won't use count, we'll use sum. Int I. Okay. Now, if we do this, the idea is that's going to add the numbers from 1 to 10. That makes sense to everybody? So let's say while I was adding them, I also wanted to print them out. Okay, so that should be printing on the screen then 1, 3, etc. So it'll add 1 plus 2 plus 3, etc. And it'll print it out on there. The thing is, what it does usually is if it prints it out, it wants to print out the console at the bottom of the screen. It doesn't want to print it out here. You can get it to print it out right there. Not only that, some of the stuff that they put in there is if you click over here, there'll be some buttons that'll come up. And with one of the buttons, it literally draws a histogram for you. So it'll show you a graph, and it'll say, when you're at 1, the sum is 1. When you're at 2, the sum is 3. When you're at 3, the sum is 6, etc. And it draws it for you. Now, on a program like that, that's kind of silly. But when you're writing programs where you have to see output and you're doing a lot of manipulations and stuff, that's a cool thing to have. All right? And we'll look at that. All right. So you can write very simple apps in here. Okay, and most books do not show you how to sit there and come in and actually add GUI components. I want to get into that. That's one of my to-do things this weekend. My wife is talking about going to St. Louis with my daughter. She does, yeah, good, because that'll give me, then I get control of the TV, but unfortunately also the dog with a bad bladder. So as long as I got control of the TV, it won't be on, and I'll have that stuff for you by Tuesday. Otherwise, I'll have it I'll have it anyway, but it won't be as good. Yes. I don't know what the old way is. Yes. So the question was, you can still, if you want to, write it like this. But parentheses almost always are never mandatory in here anymore. Semicolons. The only time a semicolon is mandatory is if I did this and then said var count equals 7 or something like that. Then I'd have to have a semicolon here. But other than that, you never have to have a semicolon except like in here, like in a loop. But you can do it like this, or you can do it the other way. In other words, remove, 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 remove. That print line expects that's an argument, so that has to have a parenthesis right there. That, if you leave that off, that won't work. But I don't care which way you do it. If you're more comfortable because you've been programming in Java and C and other languages for years, if you're more comfortable leaving in the parens and leaving in the semicolons, you can do it. It doesn't make the program run any slower. All right? I will tell you that if you do reading, go out to Apple's website and I read, what they're saying is they're encouraging people, that they're doing new development for Apple to use Swift and to only use Swift. That's what they are encouraging. I'm not saying people are going to do that, because there's a lot of experienced Objective-C developers, and I don't think they're going to stop doing it tomorrow because Apple said, hey, we'd like you to do that. But that said, when they come up with the Swift standards, I think the standard is going to say no semicolons, and I think the standard is going to say no parens. Because that's one of the things they're trumpeting, is that you don't have to do that anymore. All right? Do whatever way you're comfortable with. I hope that answered your question. All right. So they go through and they talk about this, and it's pretty much what I just showed you. Okay? One thing to realize, they show you this on the bottom right here, this line of code. Import UIK. It says the import statement makes the Apple's UIK framework development for use in the playground. You can read this yourselves. All right? But once we go into the playground, what's going to happen, and they don't show it in here, but what's going to happen is it's going to ask you what kind of playground you want to build. Okay? And it'll say, I think one of them will be iOS, and if you click the down arrow, I think iOS is the default, and underneath I think it'll say macOS. All right? And what's the difference? If you choose iOS, which is the one I'd recommend, then what you end up importing here is UIKit. And I think if you use the other one, it imports Cocoa. All right? And what's the difference? One of them, the Cocoa, is basically designed for Mac apps, and the UIKit is designed for iPhone apps, iPhone, iPad. Does that make sense? Now, one thing though, just so you know, one thing that UIKit does is UIKit brings in the Cocoa framework, but it doesn't go in reverse. Cocoa doesn't bring in UIKit. All right? And or maybe that was even in Foundation, but we're going to get into all this. All right? All right, you'll see in here too, I've clicked a couple of these. One thing I like about the book too is the author, a lot of places will have different links in here, which is really nice. And I tried a few of them. I haven't tried every one of them. I mentioned St. Louis to you. Literally, I read the first 6 chapters while sitting in the St. Louis outlet store mall. All right, last month. That's what I was doing. People walk by when you sit there and you got all these papers and you're sitting there reading, and they'll give you goofy looks. All right. Because I probably get enough goofy looks anyway. So, all right. Now, a couple things to remember from last time. Hopefully, at least you remember these. Okay, and if you don't, okay, fine, then it's review. You can do this. I can say, for example, var, and I probably showed you the wrong format before, but this will be right because this is right from the book. All right, so var, And let's just say age equals 21. And I'm going to do it again. Var age, and I think it's just int. It might be integer. I don't remember, but we'll get there. Equals 21. Both those work. This right here uses what's called inferred typing. So in other words, if you create a variable like this and you give it a default value, the system infers its type based on that. Does that make sense? So in other words, if you wanted that to be a double, you'd have to put a 0.0 on the end. Okay? But you can't do this anymore. You can't just say that, because the system has no way of inferring the type of variable that it is. But you can do this, because now you've explicitly told it the type. Does all that make sense? All right. And there really isn't yet that I've seen any recommendation. A lot of books that I've read say, don't do this one. It's just too much typing. I don't know if that's really too much typing, but you know, I've never met somebody who said, yeah, I'm a programmer because I got into it because I love to type. I haven't met that person yet. If they're there, at least like I said, I haven't met them. But either way will work. Okay? Now, I want to show you something that might not sound like a big thing, but another thing. I've talked about this a little bit in the last class, and I realized not everybody was in that. But this is known as a very pure programming language. Literally. And what do I mean? I want to show you it like this. I want to say var age equal 21, var income equals, and I'm making this up, 45678.90. Okay? This, to me, this freaks me out. Believe it or not, that's illegal in Swift, because you're adding an int to a float or an int to a double. You can't do that. The system doesn't understand what it is you're trying to do. So how do you get around that? Well, one way to get around it is you can cast. You can do that. And another way is there's a convert to int and a convert to double function. But again, one of the things that they're trumpeting about this language is its purity. The fact that you're always playing with apples, are playing with apples. All right? And you're used to stuff like this. It is possible for you to write code. And this isn't going to be a good example, but for example, you can say stuff like this. So let's say that I've got a variable up here. Okay? In some languages, now I can do something like this and just say if age, meaning does age have a value? You can't do that in Swift. What's in here has to be a Boolean expression. The system has no way of looking at it with what's in there right now. It can't tell whether or not that's true or false, so it refuses to do it. So in other words, you've got to come in here and say something like this. Something like that. Double equals for checking for equality. There still is, like there is in PHP, there's the triple equals, which checks for equality and identity to make sure it's the right type and the right value. All right, and this won't work either. In some languages, putting that in, Mike knows this, that in some languages that'll give you a warning, but it'll still compile. That will not compile in Swift, because they say that's an assignment statement. That's not a Boolean expression. We won't let you do that. So they're very strict on the rules. You have to follow the rules. That's why what a lot of people do is when they're starting to build stuff, they take some of their beginning logic and they throw it into a playground to make sure what they're trying to do will work. Then they go and throw it onto their program. Because once you get into actual Xcode itself, where you've got an application and you start typing stuff in, you don't know whether or not it works until you compile it. But really, with a playground, it's a compiler on the fly. All right. And it's more an interpreter, I guess, than a compiler, really. All right. So they show some stuff in here. And again, I'm trying to throw some stuff in here just so you hear this. Hopefully you remember it from last semester if you were in the classes, but maybe you don't. All right. If I do this, that's how you do variables. Var, and if you do inferred typing like this, the name of the variable equals a value. Or var, the name of the variable, a colon, got to be a space. The type, and again, I don't remember if it's int or integer. So let's just say it's integer. I don't remember which one it is. Equals 21. Those work. When you work with constants, it's the word let. It's the difference. So if I grab these same things that I put in here and change the vars to lets, the difference, and you all know the difference, I think, between a variable and a constant. In this case, I can change the value of age. In this case, I can't. Swift has not come up yet and said, oh, all of your constants should be uppercase. In fact, you don't see them in uppercase in most books. I always put my constants in uppercase to signify that they're constants. And just like with a variable, you can either infer the type or you can explicitly state the type. That makes sense? No, I shouldn't say that. I don't think so. I think that these are keywords, and I think with all these, I think they expect them to be lowercase. You'll know real quick when you get in and you get into the playground, you start a new playground up and start typing in, but I don't think so. All right. Notice in here, one thing too that you get in the playground, they got var count equal 2. Then they try to set it equal to a string, and it immediately gives you an error. This is very similar to the way that it showed errors when we were in when we were working in Xcode. In other words, when you look in here, I don't want to choke myself. When you look in here, you'll get the message here, and sometimes you'll just get a dot there, and if you click on the dot, it'll show you the actual error message. All right. And by and large, you may or may not agree with this. All right, but by and large, the error messages are pretty good. I think they are. All right. Now, a couple things, and we talked about this a little bit before, but I want to mention it again. Okay, what happens is arrays that are in this language, okay, they use some of the stuff behind the scenes from Objective-C. So arrays use NS array that we talked about in Objective-C. It is possible in here to do some work with changing the size, just so you know. We'll talk about that at a later time, and that uses NS mutable array. But the point is, what happens is you can mix Objective-C and Swift code. And what happens, what the compiler does is behind the scenes, it basically tries to flip everything it can from Objective-C into Swift. All right, and they wanted to do that because the idea was they're not going to start this new language on, let's say, June 15th, and on June 16th, everybody's going to use it, and everybody's going to stop using what they've been using. It's not going to happen. So they tried to make the transition between Objective-C and Swift be as seamless as possible. All right, so oftentimes you might see an entire app that's written in Objective-C, and now people are adding to it. Now they're adding to it in Swift. All right. Okay. All right. There's the let we talked about before. So again, this print line that's right here. Again, this is that thing that we talked about at the beginning. Okay. You know, you all know this. For example, if we were doing that same program in Java, we'd have to create a class and we'd have to do a bunch of other stuff. But when you're working in here, that's about the simplest line of code that you have. Even if you remove, I think if you remove the import line, I think it'll still work. Again, I could be wrong on that. And here's those dots that I told you about before. See that? And what that shows you is if you click that dot, it shows you what will appear in the console. And you can say, well, it's the same thing. But the idea is by default, the console appears at the bottom of your screen, where the Swift stuff appears along the side. And you know this, those of you who played a little bit with playgrounds last semester, that if I come through here and I've got a bunch of statements, so I write 10 different statements. Let x equal 13. And I keep manipulating x all the way through, 10 or 12 different lines. And I go up to the top of the screen and I change x from 13 to 31. Boom, it changes all the other lines accordingly. It automatically changes that for me. All right, based on 31 as opposed to 13. All right, a lot of different types, and it looks like now I might have been wrong. It might have been just a straight int. But different types of ints. So as it says, it has 4 basic number types: an int, an unsigned integer, a float, and a double. The difference, again, ints and unsigned ints: int, whole number only, And you can see based on the type that you're using, the difference is the amount, how big the maximum and minimum values can be. Unsigned, again, can only be positive. Float and double, the difference between them is how many points of accuracy do you get to the right of the decimal place, and how many can you put to the left of the decimal place. Double's about as big as it gets. All right. And if you remember some of the stuff we've talked about in the Objective-C last semester, having like long double, long double, etc. I haven't seen any of that stuff in Swift. Not saying it doesn't exist, but I haven't seen it yet. So I don't know. You can print stuff out in octal. You can print stuff out in binary. I always laugh, and some of you have heard me say this already, but to me, I think it's funny. And that is that back in the days when I had to go and do a dump of a machine, it was all in octal, and I had to do all the conversion myself. Now you can sit there and you can print it out almost in any language and have stuff done for you automatically. All right. There's some of your operators. Again, some of these you probably won't use very often. The left bit shift and the right bit shift, usually unless you're programming operating systems or something similar to that, you probably won't use that very often. All right. So they give you a bunch of different things in here, and they show you a bunch of examples. I'm not going to do that. Strings have to be in double quotes, not like in some other languages where they're in single quotes or it doesn't matter. It has to be in double quotes. What's cool is what you can do with a string is you can incorporate Unicode characters. And one of the things I'm going to show you, I just had a glitch in my program at home, but I've written it, but I'm rewriting it now. And what you can do with a Mac is you can hit Control with a bunch of other key combinations. And I can't draw it, I can't bring it up because it's not on the keyboard. But does everybody know what this is? What is that? Square root, right? When we do the prime number thing, we're going to use that for square root. So we're literally that's going to be the name of our routine, is that. You can do that on a Mac. I don't know. You can probably do it on a PC, but I don't know how. All right? So we're going to do that. We're going to literally write a function. That's going to be the name of it. And it's going to return the square root of the value that we pass in. All right, so I'm going to show you how to do that both the old-fashioned type of way and then doing it this way. All right. All right, I'm going to go just about 2 more minutes and we're taking a break. So they show you a lot of screen dumps in here from the playground. Okay, this is what I mentioned before. Now notice they've got a for loop and you've got the HELLO, and that works because each one's on a different line. And it shows you how many times something actually executes, which is nice. Because if you're writing code, especially if it's conditional logic code, and you want to see how many times you're going into something, it'll show you the number of times. All right, so it's a really nice tool to get used to using. That's all. Not like it's a big thing, but just so you see this too. Notice character in double quotes. Right down here, down towards the bottom here, page 749, down there. See that? Let C colon space character equal S. That's in double quotes. In most other languages, you'd put that in single quotes. Not here. All right. Booleans, it's type bool. Big B, little OOL, if you are going to explicitly state it, and it can only have true and false. In enumeration, hopefully you remember this, those of you last semester who were in the class, because this looks a little weird. They work the same way, pretty much. So how's that? This is creating a brand new data type called days of week. All right? And its possible values are Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. What we learned in the Java class when we talked about enumerations, and even in the C class, is by default, Sunday is equal to an integer value of 0, Monday an integer value of 1, Tuesday an integer value of 2, etc. Not in this language. Enumerations don't have a numeric value. You can give them one. I could say here, if I wanted Sunday to be day 1, I could say case Sunday equal 1. And I could say case Monday equal 2. All right, you can do that. Or you can do it like this. It looks weird to me to do it like this because you're setting up a new data type inside of a case statement. But that's how they do it in the language. All right. So these two are equivalent, in other words. And once you do that, notice var day equal day of week dot, and the only thing you can put in after that dot is one of these. Sometimes that works really nice for your own data type that just doesn't make any sense any other way. Days of the week, all right, months of the year, etc., depending on what you're writing and how you're writing it. And there's even shortcuts. We'll get into a lot of this stuff. It doesn't really pay to go. We can't go over everything right now. All right, it's 4. Let's take a break. We'll come back, and I want to at least get through the rest of this. And we're on page 753, and then I want to go over at least chapter 1 and get into chapter 2. So let's take a break. Come back around 4:10, please.